I bid you welcome.
Turn the lights down low, light some candles, and prepare for some chills.
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 horror novels.
It was as if some mortal leprosy were eating the thing away.
For this list, we're looking at the most terrifying books ever written. We're excluding short novellas like The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as short story writers like Edgar Allan Poe or H.P. Lovecraft. We've also left out spine-chilling war and dystopian stories if they have no horror elements.
Good stuff. I assume I need no introduction.
Number 10, Interview with the Vampire, Anne Rice.
A little vampire! A book of blood and kill them! Oh, no!
Whiny coward of a vampire who prowls the night killing rats and poodles. You could have finished us both. You condemn me to hell. I don't know any hell.
Although it initially divided critics, Anne Rice's debut novel has since become a cult phenomenon.
They were in high school, junior high, whatever, and they felt alone until they found the books, and the vampires became their friends, and it helped them get through school. And I'm so grateful for that.
Welcoming readers into a more eroticized and romanticized world of vampires, she offers up the most eloquent and memorable prose on the subject since Dracula himself. The gothic horror story revolves around a tortured 200-year-old vampire who's telling a young reporter about his traumatic and lonely life living with this curse.
When I finally wrote a short story, Interview with the Vampire, I discovered what I was good at, and that was fantasy. That if I went with fantasy and stepped into this alternative reality, I could talk about what was real to me.
The visceral violence of vampirism in the American South turns the reader on as much as the reporter. And, to no one's surprise, Interview with the Vampire spawned 10 sequels, referred to as the Vampire Chronicles, as well as Hollywood adaptations.
What if I could give it back to you? Pluck out the pain and give you another life. One you could never imagine. And it would be for all time. And sickness and death could never touch you again.
Number 9, American Psycho, Bret Easton Ellis.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my God. It even has a watermark.
Something wrong?
Patrick Bateman is your typical Wall Street yuppie in the 80s. Handsome, put together, shallow, and consumed with murderous rage.
Hey, Paul!
Bret Easton Ellis provides his scathing indictment of consumerist culture through this unreliable narrator, who by day is a Manhattan stockbroker and by night is a vicious serial killer.
Many people got on the anti-American Psycho bandwagon and made quite a big names for themselves. People became famous. People got radio shows because they were protesting the book so much.
With gory imagery, disturbing language, and violence against both sexes, American Psycho was controversial to the point where its sale was limited in some countries. However, many critics enthusiastically support the novel.
I hate that job anyway. See why you just don't quit.
Because I want to fit in.
In fact, Patrick Bateman's story proved so timeless, it was adapted into both a film and a musical.
The thing that I do resent about it, however, I do resent the fact that it is the book that I shall forever be connected with. I will never be able to write a book that will have that kind of impact.
Number 9, The Haunting of Hill House, Shirley Jackson.
This is so twisted. Seriously twisted.
Most people would ignore an invitation to spend a summer in a haunted mansion, but our protagonists jumped at the chance.
Oh my God. Luke, get out now! Luke!
In Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, we follow a paranormal investigator and his small group of companions as they lock themselves up in the eponymous mansion. As simple as that sounds, And as restrained as the horrors are in these pages, no haunted house story has ever chilled readers to the bone quite like this.
Help. Eleanor. Come home.
What?
With the real haunting happening mostly behind closed doors, the terror our characters feel oozes off the page, just like the blood left on the walls of Hill House.
No one must go in that house again. Whatever's there
I'll be all right. The house has what it wants. For a while.
Number 7. The Shining, Stephen King.
Here's Johnny!
One of Stephen King's earliest successes, but sadly overlooked today due to the popularity of the Stanley Kubrick adaptation, with which King himself was not impressed.
For instance, in Kubrick's movie, the Overlook Hotel freezes, and in Stephen King's book, the Overlook Hotel burns, but that was the difference in temperament. He was cold and I was warm.
The Shining represents the birth of modern horror literature and established King as an icon in the genre.
Come play with us, Daddy. Forever and ever and ever.
Blending a classic horror setting, in this case an immense isolated hotel, with the modern terrors of abuse, alcoholism, parental neglect, and insanity. King weaves a tale far more complex and disturbing than anything Kubrick ever put on screen.
Red rum. Red rum.
Although the ghosts take a back seat in this one, don't let that fool you into thinking it's safe to turn the page, or to roam the Overlook on your own.
Why do you have a copy of The Shining in your freezer?
Oh, I was reading it last night and I got scared, so.
But you're safe from it if it's in the freezer?
Well, safer.
Number 6. Hell House, Richard Matheson.
It's hideous.
We're not even inside yet, Miss Tanner.
Although his earlier novel, I Am Legend, has gained more popularity and helped create the modern zombie and the idea of a zombie apocalypse, Matheson's Hell House takes the prize for terrifying imagery. Similar to Shirley Jackson's Hill House, the action is confined mainly to a haunted mansion, where a group of mediums and parapsychology enthusiasts tries to discover whether there is a great beyond and whether death truly is the end.
Leave a sample in the jar, please.
They decide to do this by visiting the appropriately nicknamed Hell House, where everything goes wrong as the evil forces of the house start influencing the guests in extremely horrible ways.
Drug addiction, alcoholism, sadism, bestiality, mutilation, murder, vampirism, necrophilia, cannibalism, not to mention a gamut of sexual goodies. Shall I go on?
No spoilers here.
You tricked me. God help me, you tricked us all.
Number 5. The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty.
Oh, not a psychiatrist. She needs a priest. She's already seen every fucking psychiatrist in the world, and they sent me to you. Now you're gonna send me back to them?
It's too bad that what's considered one of the scariest movies of all time was derived from relatively unknown and overshadowed source material. Following Jesuit priest Father Marin from Iraq to Georgetown as he tries to rid poor Regan McNeil of the evil demonic presence inside her.
What is it?
Based on a real-life possession, the novel takes time explaining the surroundings and circumstances of Regan's unforeseen possession.
By this sign of the Holy Cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Damien!
Most people wouldn't believe that the book could be as terrifying as the movie, but those who know Blatty's novel need courage if they decide to pick it up a second time.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Number 4. The Silence of the Lambs, Thomas Harris.
Dr. Lecter, my name is Clarice Starling. May I speak with you?
Although the first novel in the series, Red Dragon, introduced the world to Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, The Silence of the Lambs shot Lecter and Thomas Harris to worldwide superstardom, helped, of course, by Jonathan Demme's 1991 film adaptation.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Readers were shocked when they picked up what seemed like a detective thriller and ended up squirming in their seats, looking over their shoulders and questioning what's in their steak. Initially a minor character, Lecter was so popular that Harris decided to write about no one else, ushering in a trend of dark, horrific detective procedurals and suspenseful thrillers.
Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
Dr. Lecter.
Number 3, Dracula, Bram Stoker.
Welcome to my home. Enter freely of your own will and leave some of the happiness you bring.
An urban legend come to life, an allegory for disease and lustful danger leaving the old country and entering today's modern cities. Dracula is true horror put into a narrative. Vampirism, although not a new concept, had never been so eloquently and disturbingly personified. And in fact, the author is credited with pioneering the modern idea of the vampire. Bram Stoker was no stranger to morbid and gothic settings, but this count became the face of evil for generations to come.
The children of night. What sweet music, Dagmar.
This was no fairy tale. The blending of a realistic setting and supernatural elements is something audiences were not prepared for.
Look what your God has done for me.
Number 2, Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus, Mary Shelley.
We are on the verge of undreamt of discoveries if we only have the courage to ask the right questions. Now, you must help me.
Here's another famous 19th century creature that took over film, stage, and radio in the 20th century.
Quiet, you fool! Get away with that torch!
But unlike his counterpart, Count Dracula, Frankenstein's monster has been ironically misunderstood and misrepresented for generations.
I abandoned my other researches many years ago.
Why?
Because they've resulted in abomination.
The source material follows the insane Dr. Frankenstein, who successfully reanimates a corpse.
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! Oh, in the name of God! Now I know what it feels like to be God!
Steeped in romantic themes and scientific intrigue, Mary Shelley's horror novel remains relevant even 2 centuries after its initial publication. The question of scientific intervention and whether or not humans should be messing with nature are perhaps even more significant in the 21st century.
You gave me these emotions, but you didn't tell me how to use them.
Before we crack the spine on our top pick, here are some honorable mentions.
He chose you out of all the world, out of all the women in the whole world. He chose you. He arranged things because he wanted you to be the mother of his only living son.
But when the knife pierced the heart of the portrait, an extraordinary thing happened.
I can hear it from the one of you, or I can hear it from the other. You just think about that.
Number 1, It, Stephen King.
Aren't you going to say hello? Oh, come on, bucko. Don't you want a balloon?
To some, this is the King of Horror's epic masterpiece, an immense novel whose theme is fear itself.
Come closer, Beverly. We all want to meet you. We love you.
Although Stephen King has given us nightmares for decades, and many of his works almost made the cut, such as Pet Sematary, there is something about Pennywise the Clown, a creature that uses the fears of its victims against them, that will never let you go.
But it was the killer, and we stopped it.
We thought we did.
In a decade saturated with terrible over-the-top horror films, King stripped horror down to its basics and turned a brick of a complex narrative into the best-selling book of the year.
Now, for if you stay, you'll lose your little mind in my dead lives.
Do you agree with our list? Which books gave you nightmares?
How do you like it?
For more chilling top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
You fly back to school now, little Starling.